But first, we're not talking about Final Fantasy VI. I'll leave for later. First, we will be talking about this game. I did it correctly on the first try. We will be talking about the game that we spent a good, 7 months playing. Way less than Final Fantasy VIII, funnily enough. But Final Fantasy IX. I haven't done one of these unscripted reviews in so long. We'll see how it goes. It's been comparatively fast, yeah. I love the music, by the way. Yeah, I will give my thoughts on the game. I did give a quick rundown of my immediate thoughts immediately after we stopped playing, during the credits, but I wanted to give, even though it's unscripted, a more coherent version, more broad version of what I think about Final Fantasy IX, as I have been doing for all the Final Fantasy games and some Zelda games that we did. And I did start a recording. Yes, thank you so much for reminding me, but I did do it. And if I'm playing Oracle of Seasons is so good. I need to replay the Oracle games. I loved Seasons specifically. Age is also fine, but I loved Seasons. Okay, general spoiler warning. This time I do have my little note section here. I'll be talking about Final Fantasy IX Unscripted. So I'm giving a general spoiler warning at the very beginning because I have no idea whether I will hold myself to putting spoilers only in a specific section. But yes, that's very clever. But general spoiler warning. Final Fantasy IX is the third and final PlayStation 1 Final Fantasy game. It came out in Japan in mid-2000, which was super close after Final Fantasy VIII. Pretty much just a year. And it came out in Europe in the middle of 2001. So only 1 year later, we're getting to the point where slowly getting to the point where releases are happening almost simultaneously, but we're not quite there yet. Final Fantasy IX is a game that I've never played before. I haven't seen anything about the game except for some online discourse and some few clips. But I myself have never played it before. If you want to know why I stopped playing Final Fantasy games, you can go listen to my unscripted review of Final Fantasy VIII, where I talk about why I stopped playing when I was a child. And I never touched a Final Fantasy game again until 2011, I think. But I do still have the tiniest bit of history with Final Fantasy IX, because when I started replaying, or not even replaying, but playing the Final Fantasy games through the series, originally on my own, I did tell my friends about it, and 2 friends specifically who knew the Final Fantasy series and knew my taste in gaming. Both of them were wait for Final Fantasy IX. That's one that you will really, really like. And they were pretty much right, but maybe not as right as they thought they were going to be. So yeah, I've been looking forward to this game ever since, even though I didn't put that much work into actually getting to it. Only took 7 years, but hey, what can you do? Final Fantasy IX is and was designed to be a return to form after 7 and 8 specifically, and to a lesser degree 6 veered away from the classic high fantasy setting of the older games, especially the Famicom games, and the crystal theme that was going on for most of those games. Some more, some less. And yeah, the other PlayStation 1 games steered away from that and did something very, very very, very different. Like, I would consider, especially Final Fantasy VII, this is more like a steampunk game than a fantasy game. But with Final Fantasy IX, it was also a different, like, crew, core crew working on it, mostly comprised out of people that worked on the older Final Fantasy games, and they wanted to bring some of that back. So they decided on having a high fantasy setting again, and crystals again, and just like work in things like dragons and fantasy and knights and things that had been missing. Also a lot of references, like a character that looks like the classic Black Mage design, and someone who kind of looks like she has a Red Mage costume on. And yeah, out of the PS1 games, rate all 3. I'll do that at the end because that'll be a fitting end. And generally, this game has more of a like whimsical style. Goes for some more like stereotypical fantasy things, especially compared to Final Fantasy VIII. And you could see that so much in the graphical style, because the graphics, the character models go from these like almost realistic depictions of humans that we had in Final Fantasy VIII, back to like a more chibi-fied, more exaggerated, more small and cutesy with like bigger heads kind of character design. It looks more like action figures than the lanky-ass characters in Final Fantasy VIII. And you have a focus on medieval European-style architecture, clothes, and professions again. Also something that's very much missing from both Final Fantasy VII and VIII. And again, to a lesser degree, 6. The graphics, you can see that it was like the last game on the PlayStation 1 because they did, I think, the best in portraying the world that they were going to build. Like, you can still definitely see that it's a PlayStation 1 game. I mean, we played the PC version, so it's more high fidelity, but still, especially the pre-rendered backgrounds just look fantastic. They really knew what they were doing when they got to Final Fantasy IX. I like that you really have, like, from a technical perspective, a clear progression from 7 to 8 to 9. Things that weren't possible in one game get done in the next game, and so on. And so overall, even though especially the overworld is still pretty barren and pretty low detail, especially the towns are filled with life and all create like a very, very different vibe. Like Lindblum with a steampunk aesthetic, and Alexandria, which is like the classic European medieval town. I forgot what the like thieves town was called. The like darker, grittier one where the auction house was. House. The auction house was. And they did still create a lot of like varied sections, especially when later on you get to the second planet, and they made Terra, I think Terra's the other planet, look legitimately alien, which I really enjoyed. They also, of course, brought back pre-rendered cutscenes, and they did something. They continued to do something that Final Fantasy VIII introduced, which was having your characters be rendered in-engine and put over the pre-rendered background. And Final Fantasy VIII did that superbly. In contrast, I feel like Final Fantasy IX, it felt a bit off at point. I think it's because the characters looked like more chibi-fied, so they looked more stylistic than the characters in Final Fantasy and Final Fantasy VIII. And I think that made them look more out of place in the pre-rendered cutscenes in 9. Also, and this is just because they were really ambitious, and I can't fault them for that, the pre-rendered cutscenes oftentimes are way more energetic and action-packed than they were in Final Fantasy VIII. Even just one of the early scenes where you escape from the petrifying forest. It's just like a chase scene straight out of a creepypasta horror movie. It's great. That's not something that Final Fantasy VIII did a whole lot. So there is some progression there. It's just that sometimes the characters, the in-engine characters, look a bit wonky in the cutscenes. But yeah, graphically this is my favorite 3D Final Fantasy so far. When it comes to music, this is probably the best. Going from that to a way earlier game will be fun. Yeah, I mean, it's not that way earlier. It's 4 years, 5 years. That's insane to me. I'm pretty sure 6 came out in 1995. Maybe 1994. But that's insane to me. It's not that long. For being 3 games earlier. Fucking Skyrim came out 15 years ago, and we still have only seen 10 seconds of a pre-rendered teaser from the next one. Oh! Holy shit! This is the music that they used for the dancer in Final Fantasy XIV. This is where it's from. Huh. Yeah, the music in this game. While I do think that Final Fantasy VII has more iconic tracks, more tracks that most of the gaming scene would recognize, this might be my favorite Final Fantasy soundtrack of the bunch. I mean, 6 obviously is also a contender, but man, Final Fantasy IX soundtrack is amazing. And Nobuo Uematsu is just a workhorse because this is, I think, by a significant margin, the most tracks that a Final Fantasy score made by a single person has. I think still. Definitely up to that point. Let's see. How many do we have here? There's 110 in this online album that I found. That's what we in the business call a shitload. And the quality is just skyrocketed of the samples, of the compositions. I don't know. I just love that it goes back to a more fantasy setting. I mean, even now with a harpsichord, that immediately screams medieval music or Renaissance music to me. I guess more Baroque, but still, it kind of fits. Wonderful. Music is wonderful throughout the entire game. There were some tracks where I was what the fuck's happening now? But never in a negative way. At least I don't remember any standout bad songs. I only remember a lot of tracks standing out in a positive light. Let's go over to the gameplay, because this is the part where my friends who originally told me that I would love this game were kind of wrong. Hear me out. This is not something that I predicted or that they could have predicted, because the gameplay is still fun. It still works. It's still a cool JRPG, very classic. At this point, the ATB is classic. This is the sixth game that they use the ATB in. So at this point, it's considered pretty much standard. And it's the sixth Final Fantasy game. There were others, of course, that used it. Like Chrono Trigger also uses an ATB system. And Grandia 2, at least. I know I played Grandia 1. But I don't know why. I couldn't put my finger on it. In this game specifically, the ATB feels off. And that's a weird experience for me, because that hasn't been the case for any other game. Like, ATB is not my favorite system. I do prefer generally like classic turn-based system when it comes to combat. But obviously I do like a lot of games that have ATB. I mean, my favorite game is Chrono Trigger, and I just said that uses an ATB system. But it feels kind of weird in 9. I don't know why. It's just like the action economy, which you can definitely tell that I've been preparing Pathfinder by having the vocabulary, the term action economy in my vocabulary. But it just feels off. It feels like the enemies get way more turns than your characters do. This game is the only one that I at least remember noticing so often that I give orders to my characters, and it just takes so long for them to act that sometimes it feels like I gave them orders like 2 minutes ago and they still haven't acted. But it was the boss's turn like 3 times. And combined with a surprising amount of difficulty, I do legitimately think that, at least for like not counting optional content, because I didn't do that much optional content, this is the most difficult Final Fantasy game on the PlayStation 1. It might be the most difficult one since 5. Yeah, I mean, that only means like 6. And I think 6 is easier than this. And a 5 I would consider so far being the toughest one, if you don't count 2. But in 2 it's not really the difficulty, it's just that the entire game is like the mechanics are fighting you as well as the enemies. He is one against me, yeah, but still it feels like it felt off. This is why I say it feels off, because I can't really put my finger on it why I think that is. But that's not my only gripe. That's my main gripe with gameplay. The other part, and this is just personal preference, is I don't really like the equipment system. I feel like Final Fantasy like hasn't had a really, really good gameplay system, like core gameplay system, since 5. I do like the Esper system in 6. I do like the materia system in 7. The junction system is just weird. I don't have like particularly positive or negative feelings toward the junction system. And the equipment system in 9 is fine. I don't particularly care for it though. I feel like it doesn't feel as impactful. Swapping equipment, like putting the abilities onto equipment that you want to swap to because you want to have the better stats, feels kind of weird. In theory, it's fun to like have to decide between equipping new and better equipment immediately or sticking with the old one to learn the skills it gives you. But it just never really jived with me. And unless I am missing something, and this is the legitimate point of criticism, I dislike that you don't see in the shops what abilities are on a piece of gear before you buy it. That's something that I legitimately didn't like. It could be that I just missed the like menu option to see it, but even, I mean, if I did miss it, it's so well hidden that it might as well not exist, which is also a problem. It's a fine system, but I do think legitimately it's the weakest one out of the 3 PlayStation games. Pretty much the best thing I can say about the equipment system is that it's not a negative thing. It's just not good. I even preferred the junction system, even though it's insanely Byzantine. And I do like that they didn't bring it back. But at least it's interesting. This game also, again, has a surprising amount of difficulty, which is combined with another, like, that's more of a pet peeve of mine, but I do think it's funny how often this game takes your healer away from you. It does take a good while in this game before you are allowed to freely select your party members. And until you do it, you're forced to run with the party that the game gives you. And the 2 healers you have, Dagger and Aiko, get taken away from you so often, which leaves you with Kina as the only other, like, character that at least does get a heal. But it's not... Kina's not a good healer. I mean, Freya also has, like, a hot, but that's it. That made parts of the game really difficult. Overall, though, the gameplay is fine. And it's even fun. Because there's nothing that's really bad about it. Even like the off-feeling ATB, it's not bad. It didn't detract from my fun that much. It just kind of spiked in certain situations where I felt like it was particularly bad. But I still enjoyed playing this game quite a bit. And actually, not just part of, a huge reason of why I enjoyed this game a lot is the characters. I love a lot of the characters in this game. And this is, I feel like, one of the weaknesses of Final Fantasy VIII, because I didn't really care for any of those characters, except for Zell and Laguna. Yeah, especially... Obviously, Vivi is the GOAT. Vivi is one of the best characters in RPGs. Steiner is amazing, Dagger is amazing, Aiko is fantastic. Mostly comic relief, but not just. And Kina also. Kina's pretty much just comic relief. But also legitimately a fun character to have and to walk around and to listen to. Freya and Amarant, I feel like, are definitely the weakest ones. But they're fine. They're not bad characters. They're just not really that interesting. And especially Amarant comes super late and doesn't really get, like, mostly anything to do. He's a very one-beat kind of character. But it's fine. There's definitely way worse characters. Like Zidane. Well, listen, Zidane is not a terrible protagonist. I did grow to kind of like him at the end, but it did take quite a while, and I do have to say that for all the fun, for all the negative things that are said about Squall, which I stand by, I do think that Zidane is the weakest protagonist of the PlayStation 1 Final Fantasies. Arguably, the weakest one... I mean, the Famicom ones don't really have clear protagonists because the characters are just blank slates. But I feel like Zidane is arguably, at least so far, from like 4 to 9, the weakest protagonist. And that's really saying something, because I really don't like Cecil. I really don't like... I mean, I'd say Cecil is the weakest one, but I feel like people are going to wait for me in Dark Allies with sharp knives when I continue bashing Final Fantasy IV. But again, Zidane did kind of... I did grow to like Zidane more by the end. And he's not a net negative, which is... I mean, sometimes that's all you can ask for. The game's not just its like playable characters, though. Those are also playable characters. Characters that you have in your party only for like a little bit, like Marcus or Beatrix, which are also fun. Like the NPCs are also a lot of fun in this game. Queen Brane is a fantastic over-the-top villain. I love that Sid is a bug for like 70% of the game. He grew to be less one-dimensional, yeah, and I did enjoy. Once he did so, I did start to enjoy him as a protagonist. Kuja, I do have to say, is a villain that I really like. All of these, well, I was about to say all of the Final Fantasy I games have really strong villains. Well, but 8... Ultimecia is fine. She's more of a plot point than an actual like antagonist, but she's a pretty good plot point, so it works. But yeah, Kuja is... I think Kuja is a really cool villain. I wish we could have gotten into his psyche of why he wants to pretty much just destroy everything, because he views his own birth as a mistake, his own existence. We could have gotten into that like a tiny bit more, because that came really late and then was kind of rushed. But I did like Kuja's design, I did like his manner of speech, and I did like how he was integrated into the story. He did feel like a cool villain. This music kind of just threw me out of it. I think that's the theater troupe, right? Don't know. Where this game, I feel like, really shines is its story and world building. I think that Final Fantasy IX has the strongest story. 7's story is also really good. But I feel like 9's is just behind it. And both are just behind 6. The story is just... It starts super strong. Like, the beginning of the game is one of my favorite beginnings to any game. Really action-packed right from the start. It does take a bit of a, like, downturn and gets way slower after that. We didn't play 6 yet, but I'd played 6 before, so I know. And the story really continued to evolve the entire time. I felt like when we got past like the very beginning of the game, there was rarely a part... I'm not allowed to spoil myself, you're right. There was rarely a part where I did not enjoy the story. I was looking forward to what happens next in the story. Some turns were predictable, like Brane dying. Some things were really not predictable at all. Like pretty much all of the early Eidolon scenes where like the giant like Atomos, the giant mouth. Yeah, all of the genocides. Freaking Bahamut nuking an entire fleet. Quite brutally, just like mega flaring the queen from like 12 meters away. That was heavy stuff that I did not expect from this game. And obviously, especially Vivi's storyline was really heavy. Like this game did dip into some really heavy themes. which with a cutesy look and the like high-ass fantasy designs of everything, I really didn't think necessarily would happen. I thought the story would be more lighthearted than that is. It has some One Piece backstory shit. Yeah, that's kind of fitting to say. But I think the story is legitimately this game's strongest point. I don't want to say that much more about it. One thing, though, I did feel like this game's what I like to call the inciting incident. The part of the story where it really kicks into gear and you really figure out what the main point is. Even though it didn't really turn out to be the actual focal point, happened really late in this game. I'd say when this plot kicked into overgear and you felt like you knew that was the defining story theme of the next part, was when they kidnapped Dagger and ripped the Eidolons out of her. I'll try to do that at the end. I think that's the most fitting point, and I am at the end almost. While I think in 7 it would be like Shinra Tower, when President Shinra is killed by Sephiroth. Especially when you are released, when you're escaping from Shinra Tower, there's blood everywhere, Genova's gone. That's 7's inciting incident. In 8, it's probably the failed assassination of Ultimecia at the end of Disc 1, where shit really gets going. Yeah, and this game, it takes a while to get going, but it's never not interesting, and man, it does tell its story so well. One little tidbit that I forgot to say during the gameplay section, there's also a card game in this one. After they had a really fun card game in 8, they decided to have a card game again, but this time apparently the job was to make an insanely strange and Byzantine one with Tetramaster. They did steal a lot of my cards. The thing is, I wanted to like Tetramaster because I do like the general idea, but I just didn't understand the entire time why some cards have high numbers, why they have low numbers, why the numbers change. It made it really unpredictable and frustrating. And I do get why a lot of people say don't care about Tetramaster. Just don't engage. Overall, I did have fun with Tetramaster, but it was kind of annoying. Yeah. So, ending thoughts. I really, really enjoy Final Fantasy IX. I'm glad that I finally played it. The story and the characters are what carries this game. And I think that this game is one which I can't say for all Final Fantasies. I will replay Final Fantasy IX. I think it will be a game that I will occasionally replay because this is really something, this world and style and atmosphere is something that the other Final Fantasies don't give me necessarily, not in the same way. And I don't think I will be replaying 8 a whole lot. But 9, yeah, I do enjoy. I did enjoy Final Fantasy IX. Is it one of my favorites? No, it's in the top third. While I think I did post a tier list on Blue Sky, and 7 is in S tier. I think 9 is at the end of A tier, and 8 is at the end of B tier. So they're nicely spread out. All of them fine games though. And that is my little unscripted review about Final Fantasy IX. My god, we haven't done one of these in so long. It was fun.